The world of the 19th century was changing in dramatic ways. Industrialization was revolutionizing all areas of life and would transform European societies forever, including the way they waged war. Hi, I'm Jesse Alexander, and welcome to Glory and Defeat, the story of the Franco-Prussian War. From July 1870 to May 1871, the war that pitted France against Prussia and the other German states kept the world in suspense and changed the course of European history. To understand how, today we'll explore the world of the Franco-Prussian War before the shooting started. So let's take a look at what the 19th century was like and how technological, social, and political changes revolutionized Europe. Let's start with technology and the game-changing invention of the steam engine. Steam engines were first used in England back in the early 18th century, but they became a lot more powerful when James Watt invented a steam condenser in 1769. These new and improved machines were used to increase production in coal and iron ore mines. The increased productivity led to a cycle of more demand for coal, iron, and new products made from steel. The most important of the new steel products was the railway. In 1825, the first railway line for passengers and goods began service in northern England, and it kicked off a revolution in mobility. Distances that had previously taken days or even weeks to cover now took hours or days. And the radical new technology soon spread to France and what is now Germany in 1827. Between 1848 and 1870, the railroad network in France grew from 1,800 kilometers to 17,500 kilometers, and developments in the German states were similar. This new technology caused some concerns, as some feared that the speed of the trains might cause people to go mad. It didn't, and Europe's military saw its potential for moving armies faster than ever before. Locomotives and railways were not the only uses for Europe's new abundance of steel either. Massive steelworks like the Krupp Works in Prussia also produced steel for modern warships and cannons. Weapons could now be produced in industrial quantities to equip the mass armies of the second half of the century. And inventions like breech-loading rifles and artillery revolutionized tactics and made 19th century battlefields more lethal than ever before. More production meant that there was an ever-growing need for more workers, which caused quiet towns to grow into industrial cities. Manchester had just 35,000 residents in 1750, but 250,000 in 1841, and the rest of Europe wasn't far behind. Industrial centers sprang up around coal fields in central England, northern France, Belgium, the Ruhr, and Silesia. And the millions of workers arriving in these industrial zones got there by rail, which seemed to have conquered space and time. To the newly minted industrialists who owned the mines and steel mills, all this was quite an ingenious cycle. Now, aside from steel mills and mines, industrialization also brought other changes. The railway shrank the world for those who had the means to travel, which gave birth to tourism. Industrial production methods increased crop yields, which reduced the danger of famine in developed countries, and advances in medical science helped save lives. Electricity began to light towns and eventually homes, and made possible even more inventions like the telegraph. The telegraph allowed people to send messages faster and farther than ever before, and by 1860, a transatlantic cable linked the telegraph networks of Europe with the United States. The public could now get domestic and foreign news almost as it happened, and react to it directly, a news cycle that changed the nature of press reporting. Telegraphing also revolutionized communication in war by shortening the chain of command. In the Crimean War in the 1850s, cables from Paris could reach the front in Russia in just one day. Industrialization and the steam engine were transforming the economy and society all across Europe. Some observers also noticed that the changes came at a terrible cost to the workers that made them possible. The industrial growth of the 19th century happened because of the exploitation of millions of people. Inventions like the steam engine brought progress, but also plunged entire professions into misery. Millions of textile weavers and farm workers found their jobs replaced by steam-powered machines. The unemployed then had no choice but to go to the new industrial cities in the hopes of finding work. If they found a job, it was poorly paid, dangerous, and so unhealthy that the average life expectancy in the industrial workforce was barely 40 years. A new social class was emerging in the polluted, filthy slums of Europe, the proletariat. One observer of these changes was Prussian writer Friedrich Engels, who arrived in Manchester in 1842. He was appalled at the living conditions of the working class. Down by the river are several tanneries, which fill the whole area with an animal odor of decay. In the depths flows, or rather stagnates, the Irk, a narrow, pitch-black river full of rubbish and refuse. The dwellings are all smoke-blackened, crumbling, old, with broken window panes and window frames. Cattle sheds inhabited by men. Workers like those Engels observed would not only sweat in the factories, they would also fill the ranks of the mass armies of the US Civil War and the Franco-Prussian War. Engels was equally disgusted with the attitude of those who profited from the workers' misery. He called the group of people who owned property and exploited the workers bourgeois. I once went into Manchester with a bourgeois and spoke to him of the bad and unhealthy building, of the poor condition of the workers' quarter, and declared that I had never seen such a badly built city. The man listened to everything calmly, and at the corner where he left me, he said, "And yet, an enormous amount of money is made here." In 1848, Engels and Karl Marx published the Communist Manifesto, which introduced concepts like class, added value, and owners of the means of production to European politics. Out of the slums of industrialization, a new and radical ideology had been born. The misery of the industrial labor force had given rise to communist and Marxist thought, but Marx and Engels weren't the only ones with new ideas. There was another new concept that would change the 19th century world as well, and it was nationalism. The French Revolution of 1789 brought the idea of the nation into the world. Before the revolution, people were subjects of a king or prince, and their identity was based on religion, their village community, or their occupation. The revolution introduced the notion that people were citizens of a larger whole based on a common language, common values, and a shared idea of their history. Citizens of the French nation also had certain rights and certain duties, including military service. When Napoleon's armies conquered most of Europe before 1815, they exported this idea outside of France, and that's when the peoples that they occupied turned nationalism against its French inventors. Now, not everyone became an instant nationalist. Peasants and workers were usually less enthusiastic, but amongst the educated and the middle-class bourgeoisie, nationalism was all the rage. Nationalist movements sprouted up in the Italian states, the German territories, the Hungarian part of the Austrian Empire, and in the divided Polish-speaking regions. There were regional differences, but these movements all wanted to create an independent state for their newfound nation, which was a recipe for conflict with dynastic rulers or French occupiers. This was particularly true of the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, a loose federation of many independent German-speaking states. In spite of its name, it was not a single united German state. In other words, Germany did not yet exist. Instead, the Holy Roman Emperor was a figurehead, and the most powerful states in the empire were Prussia and Austria. Here too, academics and middle-class German speakers enthusiastically hoped for a united Germany, especially after Napoleon destroyed the old Holy Roman Empire in 1806. Some German states fought with Napoleon, but others, including Prussia, fought back and eventually defeated France in what the Germans call the Wars of Liberation. Many German speakers felt that they'd gone into battle for a German national and constitutional state modeled on the French Revolutionary Republic of 1789. But unlike in France or Spain, what a German nation-state would look like was still unclear, since the German states had different religions and cultures. A popular song of the day asked, "Was ist des deutschen Vaterland?" What is the German's fatherland? The song defined the fatherland as everywhere German was spoken, which clashed with the territorial claims of other groups. This was an original sin of the German national idea, and one of the many reasons why there was no united Germany in 1815. All of these dramatic technological, economic, and social changes have caused historians to refer to the 19th century as, quote, the transformation of the world. Industrialization accelerated the pace of life and work, led to modern mass society, and to the creation of the working class. At the same time, new political concepts like communism and nationalism began to take hold. By mid-century, this combination of rapid change and radical new ideologies would lead to a wave of revolutions that would shake all of Europe, including France and the German lands. Now, an ambitious and in-depth documentary series like Glory and Defeat can only exist with your direct support. So if you want to contribute to the project, you can go to realtimehistory.net/gloryanddefeat, and you can even get some cool rewards in return. So join us for Glory and Defeat as we tell the story of the Franco-Prussian War week by week, only on Real Time History.